What's happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel, where for today's review we're going to be checking out the Transformers movie masterpiece MPM-14 BONECRUSHER. And as we check him out in his vehicle mode, he is an officially licensed Buffalo Minesweeper, so is an absolute unit. Now, we did very briefly see him utilize this form in the film, mainly to single-handedly wipe out some of those vehicles on the highway, and it was just so cool. To be fair, all of those 2007 movie Decepticons had obtained militaristic alt forms, so were all awesome. And one thing which I thought was really cool about that was even when they weren't transformed, they just came across as so imposing. And BONECRUSHER is a prime example of that, literally, as he does go head to head with Optimus Prime. Now, as we check out the vehicle mode, so nicely detailed and put together, especially when you consider what this guy transforms into. So as we take a look at the details, I really like how every single one of the tires has been accurately modeled after the actual vehicle as seen in the film. So the specs do line up perfectly. There's the Decepticon insignia, Megatron engraved into each and every single one of these. And the weathering effect, I think, is really cool. Really does give you the impression that he's been rolling around in the desert. You can see that even more as you check out the windshield and the window wipers. Tiny details like this up front, I just think are so cool. And even as we flip this guy around to the side and the back, check out the BONECRUSHER insignia on each side. That has been so nicely painted and detailed. Even the back of the truck, I think, has come across super well. And this side does have some additional details, such as this stack. There are a group load of mirrors here, which is such an awesome touch. And let's not forget the enormous Minesweeper. Now, this thing is super cool. I believe it's articulated at 3 individual ratchet joints, so you can move this around in a whole variety of ways. And then the actual Minesweeper itself can be posed at 6 individual points, so you can get it looking kind of crazy. So that's wicked. Even in vehicle mode, it is a pretty useful weapon for him to use. And one thing which I think is super cool about this masterpiece is that when we are very first introduced to BONECRUSHER in Cybertronian, he does state that BONECRUSHER is rolling, and this guy rolls probably the best out of all of the MPM figures. All 6 wheels are pinned on, so he has no issues at all in taking out Prime on that highway. And trust me, the awesomeness of the vehicle mode is just a taste of what's to come when we get him transformed into his robot mode. Now, as we check out a few comparisons, considering he wasn't really around long enough to face off against any of the other Autobots, here is how he compares alongside the movie masterpiece Optimus Prime. And vehicle mode wise, I do think these match up quite closely to the actual vehicles as seen on screen. The Peterbilt semi-truck is an absolute unit, and it wasn't until very recently I realised how enormous these Minesweepers are. So I do think this is pretty close to the film, and it is just so cool to have a Decepticon which is not a leader being roughly the same size as the leader of the Autobots. Those 2007 movie Decepticons were just brutes, and it's a shame that after that movie, all of them began to get weaker and weaker. Here is how he sizes up alongside the Studio Series Voyager class BONECRUSHER, so there is a huge size difference as you would expect. But to be fair, the Studio Series version did do a pretty good job in capturing the look of both the vehicle and the robot. So if you're just a mainline collector, then in all honesty, this is still a really good figure. But of course, the masterpiece in terms of detail and accuracy just takes it up to a whole other level. Here we have the Voyager class Rise of the Beasts Optimus Prime, just so you guys can kind of gather a sense of scale between a masterpiece figure and a regular mainline Voyager. So a huge difference. Here is how he sizes up alongside the Rise of the Beast Deluxe Class Bumblebee. So again, massive. The size of this Camaro does seem to roughly match up with the vehicles that BONECRUSHER was tossing around in the film. So if you transform a few of these Studio Series Autobots, then you do have some victims for BONECRUSHER to wipe out in his alt mode. And then finally, on the left hand side, we have the TF Dream Factory third party masterpiece scale BONECRUSHER. Now, this was a very impressive figure for its time, but the brand new movie masterpiece is just way more accurate colour and detail wise. The only thing that I think this does better would be the rubberized tyres, but with the exception of that, this version absolutely obliterates the previous competition. Meat Rod! This guy is just seriously so cool, and every single time I check him out, I just see him plowing through that bus, charging into Optimus Prime. The design in the movie was without a doubt one of the more complex out of those original Decepticons, but I think it has been translated so well from screen into this action figure to the point where not only is this one of the more impressive MPM releases to date, but it's definitely one of the best live action movie figures I think they've released in a very long time. Because he is a Michael Bay Decepticon, the design is so complex. I find it crazy how the side windows of the vehicle actually crumple and completely wrap around the shoulders. The Minesweeper then plugs into the top two tires. The head sculpt is looking banging. There's even a pair of mandibles inside the mouth, which was a detail I never even noticed in the movie. And this is a masterpiece, so he does have some die-cast metal, mainly here, and here. So that's a pretty decent carryover from some of the past releases, and just check out how lanky and enormous those arms are. The dry brushing to the biceps and the elbows too I think is pretty impressive, but the legs are just nuts. The wheel placement is spot on accurate to the movie. None of this here is fake, so all of the wheels that you see do actually roll in vehicle mode, and then they end up in these spots for robot mode. It's just so impressive, and this guy was iconic for charging into battle on basically a pair of roller skates. So it is sick to see these heavy duty tyres which are kind of fastened in place by a pair of alien tendrils. Even the back of the figure for the most part has been accurately detailed to match the CG design. The Minesweeper is enormous. It's even more articulated in this form than it was in vehicle mode. So in addition to being able to be combined to give you an impression that it's trying to grab Optimus Prime, it can then be split into two individual pieces, and all of the spikes on top, much like in vehicle mode, are on their own individual ball joints. So you can really move them around in pretty much any way that you'd like. And the articulation just in general I think is super impressive, especially when you factor in the scale and the complexity. So starting off at the head, it's on a ball joint and a hinge. So this will look up and down, it will then rotate left to right, look side to side, and in addition to that there's a post which allows you to click it one place either to the right or to the left. The shoulders are on double hinge joints, so these can move slightly out to 90 depending on whether or not you use this ratchet joint or the transformation hinge. The bicep is on a swivel, and due to the way the elbows have been designed for the transformation, technically we get a double range, so you can kind of make these look like spaghetti. The wrist will swivel all the way around, and technically you do get individual finger articulation, although when you move the middle two, it definitely does begin to look a little strange. But I think my favourite point of articulation has to be that he finally has a waist joint. I can't ever recall a live action movie BONECRUSHER being able to turn left to right, so this is sick. I mean, check that out. It can basically go the full 360, and then the hips are on ratchet joints. These can actually bend a little past 90, although the ratchet going back, I'm gonna be honest guys, does sound kind of cringy. It's like there's something grinding against those gears, and I'm not quite sure how long that's gonna last over time. But we then get a hinge joint which can kick out to 90, a very sturdy thigh swivel which again is mainly due to transformation, a knee bend which can click roughly back to that far, and then finally some supreme ankle rocker joints. So again, having this guy battling against Optimus Prime is going to be no problem at all, and despite how large he is able to pull off some quite dynamic poses. As you will recall, before Optimus Prime takes this guy's head clean off, he issues a fatal uppercut which literally causes his eye to pop out of the socket, and that's exactly a feature that you can replicate with this figure. So they do give you an interchangeable faceplate which has been super nicely detailed. You can even make out the tiny little tendrils which are holding the eye into place. It's also very easy to swap out, so you basically just take this faceplate, give me your face, slide it clean off to reveal this crazy ass looking endoskeleton. And then this new one here slides right on top, which I thought was a great inclusion. And then a bunch of accessories which I just was not expecting would be a total of 6 flame effects. Now there can be only one reason why they packed these in. And it's of course so we can have Bonecrusher flaming, like when he literally plows himself through that bus and is on fire as he charges into Optimus Prime. A Decepticon on fire, I just think is so badass, and these are accessories which I just never thought we would see. I mean, come on, this is an official Hasbro Bonecrusher which is on fire. That is really great, and all of these sculpts are individual, so it does just look sick. There's even some here for the roller skate, so yeah, that's a wicked inclusion. Now, as we check out some comparisons, on the right hand side we have the third-party TF Dream Factory Masterpiece Scale Bonecrusher, and it has served me well over the past couple of years, but I'm gonna be honest guys, this new MPM has very quickly made it redundant. It's not often that Hasbro and Takara get the upper hand over the third-party figures, but in this case I think they most definitely have. Here is how he stacks up alongside the movie masterpiece Optimus Prime. Very accurate to what we saw from the film, and as I mentioned previously, those 2007 movie Decepticons were just massive. Bonecrusher wasn't even the second in command, and even he towered over the leader of the Autobots. It's just a shame that after that 07 movie, the Decepticons in general just seem to have got smaller and definitely a lot weaker. Here he is alongside the 2007 movie Megatron, MPM Starscream, last year's masterpiece, that being Blackout, and I actually had no idea that these two were exactly the same size. So again, those 2007 Decepticons were just massive, and I think these two may just be some of my favourites in the entire movie masterpiece lineup. Masterpiece Barricade, and with the exception of Decepticon Brawl, who I imagine we'll see next year, those are pretty much the core Decepticons from that original Michael Bay movie. And then for some mainline comparisons, here we have the Studio Series Bonecrusher. Now in Revenge of the Fallen, this guy's CGI design did technically get resurrected, as there was a version of him which was enormous. So I guess if you wanted this MPM figure to scale with some of your mainline releases, perhaps it could fit in with your Revenge of the Fallen collection. And then for two more, here we have the Rise of the Beast Optimus Prime. And then finally, the Deluxe Class Bumblebee. So, Bonecrusher is just massive. And so, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Movie Masterpiece 14, Bonecrusher! By far, one of, if not the best entry into the MPM line so far. Super accurate in both vehicle and especially robot mode. The engineering is just crazy. This has to be one of the most involved live-action movie figures that Hasbro and Takara Tomy have ever put out, and it makes me so pumped as they round the Decepticons off next year and head into Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Everything about him is pretty much a straight 10 out of 10. He's just a remarkable figure, and he's definitely worthy of the title Masterpiece. I would love to get your thoughts on this MPM-14 down in the comment section below, and until my next review, I thank you guys all so much for watching. Transform and roll out!